I married the same woman twice, 30 years apart. The first time I was 25 and she was 22. We spent 12 years together, had 3 kids, built a life, or at least that's what I thought we were doing. But at 37, when I looked at our marriage, all I could see were the fights, the exhaustion, the differences that seemed impossible to overcome. I thought I had married the wrong person. I thought love had simply ended. We separated, and for 3 decades I lived my life, raised my kids from a distance, built my career, got older. There were moments when I was sure I had made the right choice, and others when doubt visited me in the quiet of the night. Until at 67, fate put her back in front of me. And this time, I was a completely different man. A man that life had taught what pride and immaturity wouldn't let me learn at 37. Today, at 70, 3 years after marrying her again, I can say with absolute certainty, I knew nothing about love when I was young. And if you're watching this, maybe I can save you from wasting decades like I did. Because these aren't theories. These are scars that became wisdom. Today I realize how I managed to destroy my marriage without even noticing. In my head, I was fulfilling my role. I was a good husband. I worked from sunrise to sunset to support the family. And her, she took care of absolutely everything at home. 3 kids, diapers, crying, sleepless nights. I ended up hiding behind the excuse of working too much. And the truth was, 1, I was absent, not physically, but emotionally. When she tried to talk about how exhausted she was, about how she needed help, I heard it as complaining, as ingratitude. After all, I was working so hard. How could she not see that? The fight started small, about who forgot to do what, about money, about the kids. But what was really at stake was something I would only understand decades later. We were both screaming to be heard, but neither of us knew how to listen. I wanted to be right, always. Every argument was a battle I needed to win. And with each of those victories, I lost a piece of her, a piece of us. When our youngest turned 6, we both looked at each other and saw strangers. The only thing we still shared was the same roof. I said I thought we should separate. She agreed. Simple as that. I was certain I was making the mature choice, the smart choice. Today I know the truth. I was running from having to face my own mistakes, running from having to change. And here's the first lesson I learned too late. Be right isn't worth more than being together. You can win every argument and still lose the person you love. Because in the end, a marriage isn't a courtroom where someone needs to be guilty. It's a partnership where both need to give in for both to win. But I didn't know that at 37. And for not knowing, I wasted 3 decades. 30 years is a long time. Long enough for kids to grow up, build their own lives. Long enough for me to become a grandfather. Long enough to bury people I loved. And long enough for life to teach me, the hard way, what I refused to learn when I had the chance. In the first years after the separation, I convinced myself I had done the right thing. I was free from the fights, the demands, the expectations. But the freedom I wanted so much had a strange taste. A taste of loneliness, disguised as independence. I dated other people. Some were even serious relationships. But there was always a moment when I knew I was repeating the same mistakes, the same pride, the same inability to really listen, the same need to be right. Until at 52, something happened. My father had a stroke. I spent 3 months taking care of him until the end. And it was there, watching that strong man fade away slowly, that something in me broke. I realized in my whole life I had treated love as if it were guaranteed, as if there was always time to fix things, to improve, to change. But there isn't. Time runs out for everyone. And here's the second lesson that changed everything. Mature love isn't about feeling. It's about daily choice. It's waking up every day and deciding to be patient, deciding to listen, deciding to let go of your ego for the good of both of you. Feelings come and go. Choice is what sustains everything when feeling fails. After my father died, I started seeing my kids differently. They were already grown, had their own families. And with each visit, I saw her, not physically, but in the stories they told. Mom always says this, Mom did that. I'd lost not just a wife, I'd lost decades of shared stories, of family dinners, of grandkids who knew me as the grandfather who lives far away. As my middle son had finally said, Dad, why did you never try to really talk to Mom about what really happened? And the truth, I was scared. Scared to admit I was wrong. Scared it was too late. Scared to hear she had moved on and was happy without me. But at 67, when I received the invitation to my granddaughter's graduation, I knew she would be there. And for the first time in 3 decades, instead of avoiding it, I decided to face it. And that brought me the third lesson. Relationships require courage. Courage to be vulnerable, to admit mistakes, to risk being rejected. Because the regret of trying and failing hurts much less than the regret of never trying. When I saw her at that graduation, she was 64. Gray hair, a few extra pounds, the lines of time marked on her face. And you know what I thought? She was more beautiful than I remembered. Because this time I wasn't seeing with the eyes of a 37-year-old man full of resentments. I was seeing with the eyes of a 67-year-old man who had finally learned to see. My granddaughter's graduation. She was graduating in education, and I wouldn't miss her for anything. But when I arrived at the auditorium and started looking for my seat, I saw her. She was sitting 3 rows ahead, talking to our daughter. And for a second, I thought about turning around. 30 years is long enough for 2 people to become complete strangers. But then I remembered what I had learned. Courage. I took a deep breath and sat next to her. Hi, was all I could say. She looked at me, and for a moment that felt eternal, she said nothing. Then she smiled, a small smile, tired but genuine. Hi. The ceremony lasted 2 hours, and during all that time, we stayed there, side by side, watching our granddaughter receive her diploma. We didn't talk much, but there was something in the silence that was different from the silences of the past. It wasn't heavy. It was respectful. After the ceremony at the restaurant where the family gathered, we ended up sitting next to each other again. And it was there, between one plate of food and another, that we started to really talk. Not about the past, not about hurts, but about life, about the grandkids, about how time had passed quickly. And for the first time in 3 decades, I wasn't trying to be right. I was simply present. Before we left, I did something I had never done when we were married. I apologized, really, without justifications, without, but you also. Just, I'm sorry for everything. She was silent for a moment, then said, me too. And something started there. In the following months, we started talking, first through short messages about the grandkids, then calls, then coffees. And I noticed something extraordinary. We had both changed. She was no longer the exhausted and resentful woman of 34. I was no longer the proud and deaf man of 37. We were two different people who by some miracle still recognized each other. 6 months after the reunion, during one of those coffees, I said, "I still love you, not like I loved before, in a better way, in a truer way." She looked at me with tears in her eyes and said, "Me too, but I'm scared. Scared we'll repeat the same mistakes." And that's when I told her what I'm going to tell you now, the fourth lesson. Honest communication without attack is what saves relationships. It's not about dumping everything you feel in the other person's face. It's about speaking the truth with kindness. It's about saying, "I feel this way," instead of, "You make me feel this way." It's about listening to understand, not to argue back. During the following year, before we got married again, we did something we had never done in the first marriage. We talked about everything, about our expectations, our fears, our limits. We established agreements, not rigid rules, but commitments about how we wanted to live together this time. And when we finally married again, at 68 and 65, it was a small ceremony, just the kids, the grandkids, and a few close friends. But it was infinitely more meaningful than the first one. Living with her now is completely different from how it was before. Not because she changed or because I changed, but because we both learned something fundamental. The fifth lesson: prioritize quality time over grand gestures. It's not the expensive trips or the gifts that sustain a marriage. It's the breakfast together. It's the half-hour conversations before sleeping. It's asking, "How was your day?" and really wanting to know the answer. It's being present in the small moments, because those are what form a life. Of course there were challenges. The kids were confused at first. "Are you sure?" they asked, worried we'd hurt each other again. We had to prove, with time, that this time was different. And there were moments of fear. Moments when old patterns tried to resurface. An argument about something silly that could have escalated like before. But now, when that happens, one of us stops and says, "We're doing it again. Let's breathe and restart this conversation." Because we learned that love isn't about never making mistakes. It's about having the tools to fix things when we do. Today at 70, when I look at her having coffee on the porch, I see everything I wasted and everything I got back. And if I could summarize everything I learned in these 3 years together again, it would be this: being right isn't worth more than being together. Choose partnership over pride, always. Mature love isn't a feeling that comes and goes. It's the daily choice to be patient, to listen, to let go of your ego. Relationships require courage. Courage to be vulnerable, to admit when you were wrong, to risk your heart even knowing it might get hurt. Honest communication without attack is what saves marriages. Speak the truth with kindness. Listen to understand, not to argue back. And prioritize quality time. It's not the grand gestures that sustain love. It's the breakfast, the conversations before bed, the small daily moments. But there's one lesson above all others, the sixth and most important. Love the person she is today, not the memory of who she was. When we reunited, I could have stayed trapped in the nostalgia of the 22-year-old girl I met. But that girl doesn't exist anymore. And you know what? The 64-year-old woman in front of me was infinitely more interesting, deeper, wiser, with her own scars, her own victories, her own story. And she also wasn't trying to love me as if I was still the 25-year-old young man. She was loving the 67-year-old man I had become, with my flaws, my regrets, but also with the wisdom only time can bring. That's a secret nobody tells you about love. It only really works when you love the real person in front of you now. Not who she was, not who you think she should be, but who she is today, with everything life made her. If you're watching this and you're in a relationship, don't wait 30 years like I did. Don't waste decades out of pride, out of fear, or thinking love should be easy. It shouldn't. Love is work, but it's the most important work you'll do in your life. And if you're thinking about giving up on someone you love, ask yourself, did you really try everything, or are you just running from having to change? Because I ran, and I paid the price of 3 decades without her. 3 decades I'll never get back. I was lucky to get a second chance, but not everyone does. So don't wait. Choose to love today. Choose to listen today. Choose to be humble, be patient, be present today, because time will pass anyway. And when you're 70 and look back, the only thing that will matter is whether you loved well the people who deserved your love. I wasted 30 years. Don't waste yours.